What's up YouTube, Capital G here, showing you guys a deck that I will not lie, I didn't pay much attention to, and I didn't really give a second thought to, because I didn't see myself playing this deck, and I figured that it was just kind of like a trashy deck that was played by one of the protagonists, and you know, I was just thinking, oh man, a whole bunch of crappy Utopia cards, whatever, not gonna ever play that. But I played this deck yesterday, and I was actually kind of surprised. Not only was the deck pretty decent, but it was a whole lot of fun, and it actually makes you feel like Yuma, but without having to run all of those trashy Gagagas and Dododos and stuff like that. Now, people might say, you know, it's not really a real Utopia deck, but I definitely think so, because the point of this deck is to summon Utopia and to summon a lot of the kind of like Zexo cards that were played by Yuma on the TV show. You're summoning Utopia, you're summoning it early, often, and always. So it's cool because you don't have to run like his build. You can still get all of the extra deck, all of the hype of these cards that came out during the Zeal era that I pretty much ignored. The cards that came out in like Judgment of the Lights and, you know, Order of Chaos, pretty much all of these cover cards that we don't really pay much attention to because they're anime cards, but you still get to run like a bunch of competitive stuff. Like if you look at this deck on paper, it pretty much is just kind of like a rank 4 spam deck, but the rank 4 that you're going for always is pretty much Utopia. I mean, there are a couple of situations where actually, I'm not gonna lie, I do summon King of the Pharaoh Imps a lot. That's just because it searches a bunch of stuff in this deck, and you may go into Castell every once in a while, but considering Utopia the Lightning is so good right now, you will be going into that card and you'll be going into Utopias a whole lot. But what's cool is you can actually summon all of the other crazy shit that he did on the anime, and you don't have to, like, you can actually run a bunch of meta cards. Like if you just look at this deck, the deck is obviously super duper duper rank 4 based. I mean, I've got the clowns in here, I've got Hat Tricker, and I've got Trick Clown. Trick Clown being just a really solid card because even though it's a 1 level 4 monster, it kind of can be, you know, 2 Xyz. Like it can count as 2 monsters when obviously you detach. We know that Hat Tricker is just a good card, helps you spam the board, put more Xyz on the field, and these guys are all just enablers of rank 4 Xyz. Gigabyte, Archfiend Eater of Nefariousness, and then Inari Fire. They all pretty much have the same summoning conditions. When there's a spellcaster face up on the field, you can special summon the card out of your hand, and they're all level 4. And there are a lot of spellcasters obviously in this deck. Obviously, we know that the clowns are spellcasters, but I also run Monk. Monk gets you another level 4 straight from your deck, and it can get rid of dead cards. Like let's just say, example, that you activated 1 instant fusion, which is just pretty much another card that counts as a level 4 because of Norden. If you had another instant fusion in your hand, you obviously could pitch Monk. There's the same thing about like Potty Cupidity, and I do run Kage and Goblinberg. I mean, this is very similar to what you might see out of like Minerva Sworn like a while ago. You guys remember that like Minerva deck or whatever that was like kind of popular for a little bit. Pretty much like the same type of monster lineup because you're playing the same way basically. Cards like Kage and Goblinberg basically make it so that you can get 2 monsters out of your hand. And then I decided to throw in 1 copy of Star Drawing because Star Drawing it's really actually quite good in this deck, although I don't want multiple copies because I don't really want to draw it. You know, I don't want to draw 2 copies of Star Drawing in my opening hand ever, and running 2 gives me the possibility of doing that. You can get this card out of your deck from Monk. Most of the time, if you're going to get something from Monk that's level 4, you'll either get Trick Clown or you get Star Drawing, because Star Drawing being level 4, it obviously gives you the Xyz plays, but it lets you draw too, which is pretty cool. And since it's a spellcaster, obviously you can summon all of these guys with it. The only defensive cards that I run as far as monsters that are not level 4 are pretty much the max Xyz. Now, the thing that people are probably asking when they look at this deck is, Cap, why the fuck would you want to summon Utopias in the first place? Like, we get that Utopia the Lightning is good, but is it worth building a whole deck around? The whole reason you want to play this deck and you want to summon Utopias is because of this card. Like, this card is so ridiculously good. And I don't mean good in like a casual good. I mean good as in like it's just good. Xyz Change Tactics is the card, and basically what it says, when a Utopia monster is Xyz summoned to your side of the field, pay 500 life points, draw 1 card. You can only control 1 copy of Xyz Change Tactics, but we just talked about how you can get cards out of your hand if they're dead in your hand, like Summoner Monk, Twin Twister, etc., etc. So basically, this is a card that lets you potentially draw like 3 cards in one turn, because let's just say that you go into Utopia, right? All right, you draw 1 card for 500 life points. Then you can go into like Utopia 1, or you can go into Utopia Ray. Okay, draw another card. You've drawn 2 cards. You're already at +1, and then you can go into Utopia the Lightning. We already know what this card does and how amazing it is, and it's a Cosmo Dart. You know, it's a Cosmo Dart Destroyer out. It's a Crystal Wing out. It's basically out to like everything. Well, when this guy is summoned, that's another Utopia that's summoned. You get to draw 3. So basically, this card for 1500 light points is a +2, and it just gets you more cards. Like maybe those cards are instant fusion, maybe there are other cards that help you just get more monsters onto the board, and you can potentially like OTK your opponent. Now, what's really cool about this deck is even though you do run a whole bunch of rank up cards, which I think is actually kind of fun. This entire time, like, these rank up cards were coming out, and by the way, I mean, even in Arc V, there are still a lot of rank up cards because Shun, the Raid Raptor guy, he runs a lot of like rank ups and whatnot for Raid Raptors. Like, I think it's kind of cool that you get a card like Rank Up the 7th one, which is known to be a really good card when you draw it and you can activate the effect. But there are other ways of using this card outside of just using it as a discard cost. What's cool about this deck is you can actually discard this to summon other monsters. You can summon things like Utopic Dragon, you can summon Hope Zexal. So if you don't know about number S0 Hope Zexal, this card is freaking insane. It's basically like a win condition. It's really that strong of a card. Basically, you summon the card by summoning a Utopia monster, one that can be used as Exceed material, so not this guy right here, and then discarding any rank up card to the graveyard. So you can use Numeron Force, you can use Barian's Force, you can use Rank Up the 7th one, which is cool because this card is never truly dead, and this Exceed summon cannot be negated, which is really huge. So your opponent can't use a Solemn, or they can't use anything that would actually negate an Exceed summon. And this card is very similar to like Shockmaster. Now you get 1,000 attack for each material, which usually when you summon this guy, it's going to have 4,000 attack, because what you generally do is you'll summon like Utopia, then you'll go into like Utopia Ray. So that's basically 2 materials for your 2 rank 4s, and then you have your Utopia plus your other Utopia. So you have 4 materials, and then what this card does is you can detach 1 Exceed material, and during your opponent's turn, they cannot activate cards or effects for the entire turn, dude. That's better than fucking Shockmaster. Like, that is insane. So like, I got a replay, and the guy just couldn't play Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, yeah, you can technically still normal summon and you get your battle phase, but you just can't use any monster effects. Like, imagine a deck like Cosmo that you play this and they just can't do anything. Like, all they can do is like summon, farm, go on attack. But again, a lot of times, even when you use this card the first time, it's going to be 3,000 attack. So have fun getting over a 3,000 beater when you can't activate any cards and can't activate any effects for the entire turn. You can't Regeki, you can't Twin Twister. So this card really does keep your field safe. And the reason that I do run a couple of defensive cards, like I run the Solemn Brigade, I run the Max C's, I run a Solemn Warning, is generally what you want to do is you want to obviously open with like your Exceed tactics. You want to go into a couple of Utopias. You want to try and draw defensive cards like your Max C's and your Solemn Notices if you don't happen to go into this. If you go into Hope Zexal, it really doesn't matter because your opponent is basically shot locked out of their turn anyways, and they really can't do much of anything, unless they basically have to wait until it's your turn and they kind of have to use shit during your turn. But they are completely locked out of their turn, and you know that your field is safe. Like, they can't Twin Twister you, they can't Dark Hole, Regeki. Your field is 100% safe. Now, there are some cards that you could potentially throw into like a Utopic deck or a Utopia deck that I don't actually run. Like, I don't run the ZWs, which I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, what the heck are ZWs? Apparently they mean Zexal weapons. So I guess I'll have to definitely watch Zexal and understand like the whole kind of arc with these. But I don't run any of the ZWs, and that's simply because this build is already kind of tight. And I have seen, like, there's a buddy of mine named Zuka. He plays a Utopia deck too. He runs a pendulum version though, with like Performa Pals, and he runs multiple star drawings. You can summon this guy, well, you have to summon it with level 5s. You can actually summon it with star drawing, and you can summon it with the other ZWs. This one is actually, not gonna lie, this card's actually ridiculously good. What it does is it equips itself to a Utopia. The Utopia gains 1,300 attack, and then it can't be targeted by effects. So it basically becomes kind of like it becomes like a Dart Destroyer, but at the same time, if it would be destroyed by a card effect, you can basically just detach this. So when you put this thing on like a Utopia the Lightning, like, do you understand how fucking hard it is to kill? Because you have a Utopia the Lightning that's 3,700, can't be targeted, is an Armades, and then when you actually destroy it, like, you just actually don't destroy it. So the card becomes extremely powerful. Like, you basically have to use something like Trishula, or, well, you can't Mirror Force, you know, you can't really Mirror Force a Utopia the Lightning. So you have to use like Trishula or like Tiramisu or some crazy non-targeting removal card. And I also don't run Utopia Ray Victory. I decided to go with Utopic Dragon instead. You can summon them both with either rank up card, Numeron Force, or Barian Force, but I kind of felt like this guy was a little better. You know what I mean? This card is kind of similar to Utopia the Lightning, where it's kind of like this one's kind of like a weaker Armades. Your opponent can't use spell or traps, but they can still use monster effects. And when this card attacks a monster, it negates that monster's effect and it gains that attack. So it can attack over like the Dart Destroyer. The problem is, I feel like Utopia the Lightning just kind of outclasses it. So I do run, what's it called? I do run Utopia Ray V, because he's basically like a Volcasaurus. And actually, I want to show you guys a quick replay of the deck in action. I usually would probably edit this, but we'll see how this goes. Let me see. I called this one No Yu-Gi-Oh! Played. Now, this isn't against the most competitive deck ever. So I'm going first, and I do open up with Exchange Tactics. This is like the best card in the entire deck. Just look how many cards I'm going to draw for this. I open up with Bonk. I've got Inari Fire. I've got Exchange Tactics, Twin Twister, and then I've got my rank up Barian Force. So let's see what I do. So I pitch the Twin Twister because I'm going first. I get a copy of Trick Clown. I go for King of the Pharaoh Imps. That gets me Gigabytes. Let me pause right quick. King of the Pharaoh Imps is very good in this stat because it can get Gigabytes and it can get Kaga to Kaga. So you're going to run that. Did I say Kaga to Kaga? So look, all right. So I play C Tactics, draw 1, go into Ray, draw 2, go into Zexal Weapon. Okay, that's fine. So we already went +1. Now, basically, this was 4,000 attack. I activate my Shock Lock effect, and even when he summons Monk, he can't even go to defense mode. Like, he cannot activate effects. So he basically just has to set some cards and pass. So I then activate, what's it called, King of the Pharaoh Imps again. He summons a bunch of Dark Magicians. Obviously, this is not the most competitive deck. I just wanted to show you guys what this deck does. So we accede into another one, draw again. That is 3 cards. That's 4 cards. That's 5 cards. I've drawn 5 cards off of this card in 2 turns. Like, just look at my field and look how many cards I still have in my hand. I basically drew an entire new hand just off this one card. Once again, I pass to him. He's basically shot locked out of his turn. He can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! And then he ends up scooping. Like, you can't do, he just couldn't do anything. Like, I was drawing massively. I drew 5 cards off of this. He couldn't do anything because this card was locking him out of playing. I almost, if extra deck space wasn't so tight, I would actually run 2 copies of this card, because you can summon 2 copies of it relatively easy. You just can't summon it with Utopia the Lightning. If you could summon it with Utopia the Lightning, it would be like legit broken. So I don't know, man. I think I'm gonna mess around with this deck a lot, maybe even build it IRL. Gotta see what happens. But thank you guys for watching. As always, I just like the fact that you can run a bunch of meta cards, but it still kind of plays and feels like an anime deck. Thank you guys for watching as always.